Now that we have connected our application to the database, let's see how we can write, read, delete, and update data from our database. But first, let's see how the database looks like. So on your dashboard, you can just click on database here, and it's going to load up. Now the database is empty, so I'll just go and create. I already created a database, but it might have been deleted, but I can just create another database. Now I'm looking for the real-time database. You have another option, which is Cloud Firestore, but we're gonna work with real-time database. Now for the real-time database, it's not going to look like MySQL database where you have rows and columns. It's going to look more like JSON file. So let me just add some data manually, and then we'll delete that data. We'll go back and add it from our app. So if I'm having this as, let's say, a to-do list where I have items, so I'll say, okay, I have items, and now I can just click here. Now this is going to serve like my table. So for example, item number 1 is going to be IT1, and I'll save it, and then I'll come here and add another item, so it's going to be number 2, and it's going to be IT2 or something like that. So this is going to serve like my table, and these are my entries in my table. And if you don't have the root, so this is the root and these are the children. And if you don't have the root, don't worry about it, because when you run the code from Xcode, it's going to create it. Or if you run the code from your application, it's going to create that root along with the children. So I can just go ahead and delete that. And now I have nothing in my database. So let me go to Xcode and let's see how we can do that. So the first thing is you will need to go to your view controller this time. Previously we worked with the app delegate to initialize the database. Now everything is going to be from the view controller, and I'll make this simple. I will not care about showing whatever on the UI. I'll just print it right here. So I will go ahead and say import Firebase database, because you will need that. So import Firebase database. This is the first line that you'll need to do. Now what I'll do in this video is I will write the methods, and then I'll just call them from the view did load to just call them whenever I load my application. But obviously you can run those methods as your IB actions. And the other thing is I will hard code the values, but again you can just have some outlets and get that whatever strings you want from those outlets. Okay, so let's start with writing to the database. So I'll say, okay, I have a function, and I'll call my function write to DB, for example. I won't have any arguments for the function. You can have a string here to write, but I'll just hard code everything to make this simpler. So first thing you gotta do, you gotta create a database reference. So we'll say let reference equal to, now your reference is going to be database dot database again, but the other one is lowercase, dot reference. So this is your reference, and this is how you can get to your database. Now remember, what we had is we had a root, and then we had children to that root. Now the thing is, if you don't have a child, you type in the child right here, is going to create it for you. And I don't even have the root, but it's going to create it for me. So let me go ahead and say, okay, for my reference dot child, I need a string here, which is the path of whatever I'm trying to set as a value. So okay, I'll say, okay, I will create a root called items, and then I'll have, let's say, 001 as my first item. Now this is the root. Now I need a value. So this 001 is the key, and this is the root, and I need a value. So I'll say dot set value, and then I'll provide it with a value. So I'll say, for example, go shopping. Okay, let me just add another one right here. So let's have another one. Let's say something like prepare for the quiz. Okay, now I need to call this from viewDidLoad to make sure that it's going to be called whenever I just run my application. And then let me save this and run it. And now when my application loads, I should be able to go into Firebase and I see this item. Why did I have only prepared for the quiz? Because I accidentally have shown you how to update. So how to update is basically just to include the previous one. So let me just do it like this. And now I'll have two of them whenever it loads. So to update something, you just provide the key and give it a new value and it's going to set it to that value. I'll go over it one more time after I'm done with like the reading and deleting part. So right now these are the items. Now obviously you can go ahead right here and make this function take some argument, which is going to be a variable, and then you set the variable right here. And again, you can use a function that is called child by auto ID, and you can look that up. It's going to help you generate random keys instead of the ones I'm hard coding right here. So it is called child by auto ID, and this is again going to create um, an auto ID for your items or keys. Now let's see how we can read from the database. So I'll say, okay, I'll create a function. I will call my function read database. I'll not give it any arguments as well. So again, the first thing you gotta do is you gotta have your reference. So you can just create your reference anywhere in the class and then keep using the same reference. And then what you'll say is, okay, so this reference needs to go to my root, and from my root, you can specify the whole path, so you can say items and then /001, but I'll read everything in that root. So I'll say, okay, reference dot child, and in here I will set the path. So my path is going to be items. Okay, now there are multiple functions that you can use with this. So there is the observe function and there is observe single event. All of those functions are available on Firebase and each one is going to help you do something. So some of the functions are going to observe just once or just pull the data once you call the function. Some of them are going to keep fetching data whenever you insert a new value. It's going to keep updating, which is a more appropriate one for this use, but this one is easier, so I will go ahead with this. And then again, as I said, all of the other function descriptions are available on the Firebase website, so you can just look those up and get the function that's appropriate to what you're trying to pull or when are you trying to pull data. So I will just go with observe single event. And in this, I will say, okay, for the single event, I want the value. So I'll say dot value. And then for the other part, I will just delete this other part right here. And I will follow this with a closure. So my closure is going to be the following. So don't mind there is going to go once I finish everything. So your data is going to come in what we call a snapshot. Okay, and then you say n, and then let me create a string array that is going to hold all my items. So I'll say let my items equal to the snapshot, and I want the value, so I can just say dot value. So snapshot dot value, and let me get this as a string array. And you will have to say any right here just to make it work. And then I have a typo here. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll just have a loop that is going to print those out right here in the console. So I'll say, okay, for my items, or for I in my items, what I'm trying to do is just to get the value. So I will have to unwrap this because this is an optional. So I will go ahead and say print I dot. Now if you say dot, you can just print the key, or you can print the key value pair, or you can print the value. So I'll get the value. Okay, and then what I have to do here is to call my read method. So let me comment this out because we already have the data written right here. And let me just say, okay, once you load, read my database. Expected something. Let me see. Oh, I had this function. Okay, so once you load, just read the database. And let's run this. So these are the parts of the data that got read when I loaded, and we can just make sure by going and editing this and say go shopping tomorrow. Okay. And if I go and load this back again, it should just pull whatever the recent data is in there. And this is how you can read the data. Now, to update is pretty simple. It is the exact same method as the write method, but you will provide an entry that is already there, or a key that is already there. So I will write a simple update that is going to take in a value, and this is going to help you visualize how you can use this with your UI, basically getting whatever from a text box or from a table view or something, and you can just get that value and make it updated. So you can just write function update and then update db. Let's call it just update db, and then you will provide it with some kind of value here. So I'll make it this way so I don't have to say value, and this is going to be string. And then what I have to do here is I'll just copy this code and you can actually say value, and the other one is, let's have it key with value. So I'll update some kind of key, and this is going to be a string, and then I'll have a value. So what I will have here is I'll say, okay, so for this part I will say this is going to be my key, and what I will have here is my value. And this is an update function that when you call it with a specific key and a specific value is going to go ahead and update your database. Now finally I want to implement a delete function, which is going to be pretty similar to this. So I will say function delete entry, let's say, and my delete entry function is going to take a key, and my key is going to be a string. And what I'll do right here is I will again create a reference, and then I'll say ref.child, and I'll specify the path. So my path is going to be in items and slash, and then I will interpolate my key right here, and I'll say dot delete or remove value, sorry, dot remove value. And this is how you can remove. So you can test these out in your view did load, and this is going to remove. So let's just do a quick one. So delete entry, and we had 001, so we will delete go shopping 001, and then I'm gonna do a read right after that. So let's run this. So it's gone, and right now I have only prepared for the quiz, and it is reflected in my Firebase database. And this is how you write, read, update, delete. Now there is one important thing that you have to make sure is there is when you go to roles, you should have the permissions set to true. If these are false, you will get an error right here that says access denied, and this is basically you don't have access to read or write. And this is why we put it in the test mode or open mode.